It was a bright morning in Georgia, the kind of day when the golden sunlight kissed the sprawling acres of farmland and painted the fields with warmth. Elijah Carter, a 52-year-old black farmer, stood at the edge of his property, gazing with pride at the land his father and grandfather had once toiled on. He wasn't just any farmer. He was one of the most successful soybean and cattle producers in the entire state. Over the years, he had turned a modest family business into a multi-million-dollar agricultural empire, supplying not just local markets but international chains as well. Despite his success, Elijah remained humble, his calloused hands and mud-stained, boots proof that he still worked the fields with his men. But there was one dream he had kept quietly to himself, a dream that felt almost too big for a farm boy from Georgia. He wanted to buy a private jet, not for luxury, not for show, for efficiency. His work often required him to travel across states to meet investors, sign deals, and check on distribution chains. Commercial flights drained his time, and chartering private planes was becoming impractical. Buying his own jet was a logical step. But to others, especially those who judged him by the color of his skin and his farmer's background, it seemed impossible. Unbelievable, even. Elijah drove to the city in his old Ford pickup, dust still clinging to the tires. He parked outside the sleek, glass-fronted showroom of a luxury private aviation company. Inside, towering aircraft models gleamed under bright lights, and sales executives in tailored suits moved with polished smiles. When Elijah stepped inside, conversations seemed to pause. His rugged boots echoed on the marble floor, his faded denim shirt standing in stark contrast to the suits and designer dresses around him. A young receptionist approached, hesitating. "Sir, can I help you?" she asked, her voice unsure, almost doubtful. "Yes," Elijah said firmly, his deep voice carrying both warmth and authority. "I'd like to speak to someone about purchasing a jet." The receptionist blinked, as if she hadn't heard him right. She gave a nervous laugh and gestured toward a sales manager. The manager, a tall man named Richard, walked over with an expression of thinly veiled irritation. "Good afternoon," Richard said, adjusting his tie. "We don't usually entertain casual visits. These jets start at $40 million. Perhaps you'd like to see our brochures instead." Elijah's lips pressed into a straight line. "I didn't come for brochures," he replied calmly. "I came to buy." Richard gave a patronizing smile, the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Carter, is it?" "With respect, these aircraft are investments reserved for serious buyers, farmers." He emphasized the word as if it were an insult. "Don't usually fall into that category." A ripple of laughter came from two other employees nearby. Elijah felt the sting. Not because he doubted his worth, but because he had endured this kind of humiliation his whole life. He stood tall, his weathered face betraying no anger. Richard led Elijah to a side office, more to dismiss him than to entertain his request. "Why don't you tell me what kind of budget you're working with?" Richard asked smugly. Elijah pulled a leather folder from his bag and slid it across the table. Inside were bank statements, company reports, and letters of credit that made Richard's smirk falter. Elijah had more than enough, not just for one jet, but for several, yet Richard still wasn't convinced. "This paperwork could be misleading," he said, his tone laced with doubt. "We've had situations before. Perhaps you should consider financing options or maybe leasing, something more realistic." The words cut deep. Elijah felt the humiliation tightening in his chest. Here he was, a man who had worked every day of his life, building something out of nothing, and still, his success wasn't enough. His skin color and his occupation overshadowed everything. Just as Richard prepared to usher Elijah out, a door at the back of the showroom opened. A middle-aged woman in an elegant suit stepped out. Claire Donovan, the CEO of the company. She froze when her eyes landed on Elijah. Elijah Carter? She said, astonished. Richard turned, confused. You know him? Claire walked over quickly, her face breaking into a warm smile. Know him? Elijah's soy exports are one of our biggest accounts overseas. My brother in London talks about him all the time. He's practically feeding half the UK. The room fell silent. Richard's face drained of color. The other employees exchanged guilty glances. Elijah simply nodded, his calm demeanor unshaken. Claire extended her hand with genuine respect. Mr. Carter, it's an honor to have you here. If you're looking for a jet, you'll have the best. We can offer. And Richard, she said sharply, turning to her employee, take notes. This man is the definition of a serious buyer. Richard stammered, his arrogance collapsing. I apologize, Mr. Carter. I didn't realize... But Elijah raised a hand to stop him. You didn't have to realize, he said firmly. All you had to do was treat me with respect. By the end of the day, Elijah signed the papers for a sleek Gulfstream jet, paid in full. The same employees who mocked him now stood in stunned silence as Claire personally congratulated him. As Elijah left the showroom, he turned back briefly. I didn't buy this jet to prove anything to you, he said quietly. I bought it because I earned it. But I hope next time someone like me walks through those doors, you'll think twice before deciding who deserves respect. With that, he walked out, his boots clicking against the marble with the weight of triumph. The farmers back in Georgia would soon look up and see a jet soaring overhead, a jet owned by one of their own. Elijah Carter had not just purchased a plane. He had taken flight above prejudice, proving that dignity and success are not defined by society's narrow vision, but by one's own relentless spirit.